There we go.
We're good? Okay.
Yep, and we're live, so we're good.
All right, we'll begin. Hi. Hello. I am Beth Weatherford. I am the school psychologist here. I have this school and one other, but this is my 20th year in the county. And I thought it was important to really start talking about this at the middle school level. I spent 17 years at high school, and we talk about that a lot, but I'm seeing such an increase in self-harm and suicidal thoughts at this middle school level. So I'm hoping that some of this information is helpful for you. I want this to be as informal as possible. If you have any questions, please let me know. I do want you to know, if any of you have a high schooler, that they do a Signs of Suicide program at the high school level. Every 9th grader gets the full program, and then they have booster sessions. And I actually developed that program with 2 other psychologists back in 2000. So this is kind of, some of this information is shared with parents there too. So when your kids go up to high school, they will be receiving this information every year. I thought I'd just start and talk about, what is depression? We hear it a lot. We hear, oh, I'm depressed, he's depressed, she's depressed. But really, clinical depression are these characteristics. It doesn't have to be all of them, but it's to a point where it's to a marked degree, meaning it's impacting one's life, school, friendships, and it's for an extended period of time. So obviously one of the most common signs is that sad mood, but a lot of times we're finding that a lot of our children become very angry and irritable when they're depressed. And there's a loss of interest in school. They could withdraw from their family or friends. Their sleep patterns may change. They have difficulty concentrating, could have feelings of worthlessness, fatigue. One thing we really look for too in our kids is the tunnel vision, which is called the all or nothing thinking. It's things like they get a bad grade on a test and they think, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail this class. No, it's just one thing. They don't see how this one small thing that is just small, they see it as so large. So it's kind of that all or nothing thinking. And some of these are very typical for developing children and adolescents. They have their mood swings. They could have some different, obviously their friendships are going to change. It's when you have not all, but more of these together, there's definitely a change in your child's personality. You're thinking something's not quite right. That's when you really do need to seek help from a professional. Do you guys have any questions about this? Nope? Okay. So we really talk about this because when we're talking about self-injurious behaviors and we're talking about suicidal thoughts, many, many times there's an underlying mood disorder that's not being treated. So terminology for self-injurious behavior is SIB, and that kind of encompasses all the non-suicidal and then the suicidal attempts. So when you see the NSSI, it's going to be the non-suicidal self-injury, and that's defined as a direct, deliberate destruction of one's own body tissue in the absence of intent to die. The suicide attempt are those direct efforts to intentionally end one's life. Suicide, the self-injury can be anything from cutting, which is pretty much the most common. There's burning, picking, anything that's a purposeful intent to harm oneself, but not without the intent to die, is that self-injurious behavior. So if you ever, the next slide, you'll see just the different acronyms for it. But what we really are starting to look at now, and we really want to make the push for, is finding out those risk factors, and then we're going to talk about some of the resiliencies, some of the things that help protect children from doing this. So some risk factors for the self-injurious behaviors are youth that are prone to intense emotional distress, and they don't know how to handle those emotions. They experience mood or personality disorders. There's difficulty with problem solving. They can't always communicate. A lot of times we find that these children are very impulsive, and they have unstable interpersonal relationships. And when we're talking about this, there is that behavioral contingent where there's an increased ability to engage in this behavior when your friends are doing it. It's a common thing. And it happens, I know in this building, it happens when you have groups of kids who start cutting together. And what I always stress to the students that I work with is that's not normal. Because I feel like a lot of times when more and more students are doing it, it becomes normalized, and it's not normal. So I always say it is not normal to want to harm yourself. Even cutting, that's not a normal way to communicate your anger or your frustration. And students that do cut tend to say that this is the only way to stop their emotional pain. And it's a really difficult thing for them to stop. So they really do need that professional help. Do you guys have any questions about this part? No? You good? Okay. And we're seeing signs of children actually doing cutting in elementary school now. It used to be just high school, then middle school. It's elementary. The stress level is so extreme, and a lot of times these children just don't know how to communicate what's going on. Then there's going to be some other risk factors we're talking about, but some protective factors that we really are trying to focus on now. Good morning.
Good morning. Excuse me.
Oh, you're fine. So some protective factors, and these are things that we really want to target with our kids, are that healthy emotional regulation skills, being able to talk to a parent or a trusted adult, a counselor, a teacher, ability to self-soothe, a strong support network. And when we talk about self-soothing, we think about like babies. They get to the point where they're crying, but they learn how to self-soothe. We need to teach our children how to do that, because a lot of times we end up providing answers for them rather than trying to help figure it out themselves. We can help guide them, but a lot of times we tell them this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, where they don't have that automatic response of how to deal with difficult situations. So having that strong support network, and I'll be honest, a positive body image, it goes against everything with self-harm. Because if you're wanting to harm yourself, you're going to hurt yourself. But if you have that positive body image and you feel good about yourself, you're less likely to want to hurt yourself. Positive thoughts and belief that make self-harm inconsistent with one's values. That could be anything from your religion to your family structure. Having that foundation that this is not okay, that this is not right, that we need to help you figure out what's going on. And in the school setting, we're really trying to work on these protective factors. We do a lot at the high school level about awareness, and we are doing some awareness here, but I really would like us to start focusing on what are these protective factors these kids have. And we're starting to deal with that through our advisories, through our counseling lessons. We deal with it in groups. We really are trying to focus on all of these positive skills these children have versus just all the negative things that are going on. So this kind of shows you the difference between that suicidal behavior and just the self-injury. It's shocking to me about our rates of suicide in this country. It is increasing, I feel like every day. It's increasing in our school systems, our youth. And then if you look at the estimates from self-injurious behaviors, it's pretty extreme. So as a psychologist and as educators, these numbers are very startling to me. So I think it's really important to get the word out that this is something that can be helped, that we can try to prevent some of this. So we talk about the statistics, and this is what we talk about a lot at the high school level too, is that suicide is the second leading cause of death in children, ages 10 to 14 and 15 to 19. There was a youth risk behavior survey which polled children in grades 9 through 12, and during the past 12 months, 17% of the students that took that survey said that they seriously considered attempting suicide. That's a very large number. 14% of them said that they had made a plan, and then 8.6 said they actually attempted suicide one or more times, then 2.8 of them had made a suicide attempt that resulted in medical treatment. Are you aware that in the school system we actually have a screening for children that are suicidal? No, you are, you're not?
What do you say?
That's a good question, I will tell you. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to get to the risk factors and some of that, but when we are informed that a child is talking about suicide, thinking about it, anything along those lines with self-harm, we actually have a protocol that we follow within this county that is an actual standardized screening procedure to look at the levels, like the severity of their suicidal ideations, if there's been any attempts, risk factors, all of those things, and we complete it. It's either done by the counselor or myself. A lot of times we do it in combination, and we always inform the parents when it's completed.
Yeah, One of the things you just said is if the child maybe have mentioned it, or if the
Yeah.
child maybe have made an attempt,
Mhm.
shouldn't we as parents address the issue of suicide ahead of time instead of waiting for a sign?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
okay.
would agree.
Maybe
so.
I missed that part.
No, and that was the awareness part that I talked about, Miss.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
I love your granddaughter.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and that's why we want to talk about this, is that this is the second leading cause. This is not something that we should not be talking about. It's not that taboo subject anymore. A lot of people find it very uncomfortable to talk about and ask those questions. I do not, because I think that you need to ask them, because if you don't ask them, they're not going to tell you. So sometimes we have some very frank conversations with our students, and they don't want their parents to know, and they don't want this person, that person. I'm like, honey, that is out of our control. When this happens, we are to tell your parents. We're to tell the people in this building that need to know, because we need to make sure that you're safe. So we always preface that. The children always know that we're going to call their parents or their caregiver. And then, so this is some risk factors for, we're going to kind of move into more of the suicidality. The risk factors are very similar, obviously, to the self-injurious behaviors. We have behavioral mental health issues, personal features, adverse life circumstances, and the personal features can be things like our LGBTQ communities. They are at an increased risk of self-injurious behavior and suicidality. Family history of suicide, self-harm, and then the environment. They could be very stressed. They could be, when they're living in an environment where they're in constant crises, sometimes they don't see how they can normalize that and get out of that crisis state. So these are all some risk factors that we look at. And precipitating events are things that trigger or move an individual from thinking about it to attempting it. It could be as simple as a breakup, a bullying incident, the sudden death of a loved one, getting in trouble at school, family turmoil, severe disappointment and failure. A lot of times, a lot of times these children are thinking, and young adults, that there's no way out of this. Things would be better off if I were gone. And we're always like, that is not true. We need to think about the big picture. We need to think about how this would affect your mom or your dad or your siblings or your pets. Anything that we can help connect them to realize that there is a tomorrow. It always gets better. They may not think it in the moment, but it does always get better. And tomorrow is a new day. So we really try to deal with these precipitating events to show them that there is a different outcome. So this is what's really important for you, is that these are the warning signs. So when you ask, like, how would we know? A lot of times, children may show very much symptoms of depression. Sorry, I'm like getting knocked out.
Okay.
Symptoms of depression where they're talking about it. That's actually the number one sign that someone's thinking about suicide, is they talk about it. We don't go on the premise of, oh, they're just talking about it anymore. We take it seriously. And we tell our students, we are taking this very seriously. Are you thinking about it? If so, have you had thoughts? What are your thoughts? Do you have intent? We talk about motives. We talk about how, where, why, when. So a lot of times they may actually seek lethal means, where they could be gathering pills up, keeping pills in their room, posting about it, writing about it. They could engage in risky behavior that's really outside the norm of them, increased substance use, and then that decrease in usual activities and extreme withdrawal. For me, it's quite startling how many suicide screenings we actually do in middle school. It's actually about similar to high school.
Wow.
And what concerns me more than anything is the impulsivity of children at this age. And their impulsive nature can lend them to doing something that they haven't thought through completely. So that's why I'm really alarmed when I have a 6th grader who's talking about it, who probably is a lot more impulsive than our 10th grader. And they don't quite get the full scope of what that truly means. So we really talk about, when you're gone, you're gone. You're gone. There's no do-overs. So this is what we're talking about. We have to be very specific with our children, very concrete. When you do this, you will die, and if you die, you will not come back. You know, we have to really talk about this in a very open manner with them. Do you have, let's see what one on the next slide is. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Do you have any questions about some things that you should look for in your kids or other children?
Well, I have.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Go ahead, sweetie. Please excuse me.
Some are on denial though.
Some
They
parents
can't-
or kids?
It could be both.
Okay, I would agree.
Sometimes it happens that and I was very interested when I saw this on
Okay.
the flyer because I work in the mental department, and you never know. Some kids can have so much information, and they can have all the info, the help, but if they still fall.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, and that's it. And
How
that's,
do you deal with it?
well, hopefully they're getting really good counseling. But there's a time where sometimes somebody is extremely intent on doing it, and it's horrible. I mean, really, it's horrible. But we're hoping at this age we can really put in those protective factors to help prevent that from ever happening. Personally, I mean, let me back up. When I said that, you know, I had helped develop the Signs of Suicide program for the high school, you missed that part. We did it based upon, it's actually, I have the website here and all of the information that they see, but we kind of tweaked it enough where it became more of a class lesson, and it kind of took a life of its own. And the reason I did it is because obviously, I mean, my job, I feel passionate about it. But growing up, my, and they wouldn't mind me telling the story because she actually enjoys hearing that I share this and hopefully it helps somebody. My mother's best friend, they had children at the same time. They were the same age in Germany. So it's my brother's age, and his name was Matthew. And we grew up, and we're all very close friends. And Matthew went to a very well-to-do high school in Washington, D.C. And then he got accepted to Wake Forest. And he was at Wake Forest during his freshman year, and they had gotten a phone call from a friend that said, Matthew just left school. He's going to Arizona. They're like, what are you talking about? He actually, long story very short, he left all of his belongings behind. He went to Arizona, said that he was just going to find himself. He needed a year off. College is not what he thought. A lot of times that happens, obviously, when we push college so much that these students may not be ready for it. But he had all these changes in his personality that looking back we see, but we didn't see it then. He came home for Thanksgiving. He was at our house. He seemed great. We thought he was getting all the help he needed. And then he went back to Arizona, and the next day he killed himself. And I tell that because he jumped in front of a train. It was very purposeful. It was intentional. He came to say goodbye, and he left. And his parents obviously are devastated. They're now divorced, and his younger brother has had actually several suicide attempts himself. So it's just a snowball effect. And I tell that story. And I tell that story to kids. I'm very open about, I know people who've tried this. I know the success stories, and the ones, success meaning they did not. And then the ones that unfortunately did, and just the impact that it has on everybody. So taking those warning signs of that change in behavior, you know, giving away things, talking about it. These are all things that someone is thinking about it, and it's not normal to want to hurt yourself. So some protective factors, again, are very similar to the self-injurious. We have family support, school, mental health, and really restricting access to lethal means. If you have medication in your home, lock it up, put it away. I mean, it doesn't need to be out. We lock ours up. Just have that lockbox. You just never know. Even if you have other people over at your house, you just never know. So just making sure you don't have the lethal means, obviously guns and the pills. And I actually have some families that have had to put away some knives in a way that their child cannot reach it. And this is actually an elementary school student, so they have to make sure that it's high for, so they're not able to get that. But having those protective factors, I mean, it could be, sports, church, friendships, community. When people feel like they belong in a community, they're less likely to harm themselves and others. And I feel like these days we're moving away from that. There's a lot more FaceTime, screen time. There's a lot less looking people in the eye, communicating, engaging. Our children are forgetting what it feels like to actually have fun moments of friendship that are face to face, not on texting. So try to limit screen time as much as you can. I know it's impossible, but and if so, know what your kids are doing. We've had situations in our schools where they monitor the websites, and we've had instances where we've had technology come and tell us that this particular student is looking up this particular thing at school, and we pull them in. So Big Brother's always watching, which is a good thing for us especially at this age. So just having that sense of community really does make a difference. These are just some really good websites that you can look on. But I'd rather, if you just have any questions for me, just kind of have a little conversation now that I've kind of shared with you my presentation. If you have any questions about it. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm glad to see all the signs.
Yep.
I'm wondering, my daughter has a lot of friends who are dealing with depression and self-harm.
Yep.
I don't think two of her good friends have tried to commit suicide yet, but self-harm and depression. As a friend who sees her other friends
Right.
have anxiety attacks
Yep.
and start crying in the bathroom, is there anything like that she can do to be supportive, or any tips like for calming down?
Well, we're trying to do a lot of mindfulness, to be honest. We're
Okay.
really making a push for the mindfulness in the schools. The difficult part about that is we are really starting to stress that, honey, this is not your problem.
Yeah.
This is their problem.
That's true.
Because when they take on that problem, their stress level increases, their anxiety increases, and then they may start self-harming. And it comes out of a really good place. They want to just help their friends. But I personally always stress, this is not
Okay.
your problem. Let's let the adults take care of it. You can be their friend, but you're not going to fix it.
Right.
Right. But they think they are. And I get that because we want to help our friends. But they're not equipped to really deal with, especially if there's a mental health component.
Right.
Yeah. So we're kind of focusing on take care of yourself, and
Right.
we'll take care of them.
That's true.
Yeah.
I guess it's the worry factor.
It is.
On her part.
Absolutely. And we just have to make sure that your daughter has the protective factors so that her worry doesn't become something more.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Ms. Banks.
By hearing that, what this lady had just said, my granddaughter is very touchy-feely, and then she's very much into her friends. She really loves her friends.
Yes.
And her thought pattern would be, oh, I've got to do something because if I lose this friend, and it, like you said, it is very important that she worries about herself. But I know my granddaughter's going to worry about losing this friend also.
Yeah.
So what would I do in a case like that? Still focus on, look, this is your problem.
You need to
And then
focus
I'm
on
going to
your
be the bad guy. At
So
that
what?
point,
I'm
you
the
know.
bad guy. I'm happy to be the bad guy. I'm not doing my job if I'm not a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
That's what I always say. If my kid's not mad at me, then I'm not doing something right.
Yeah.
Yes, and I know exactly what you're talking about because socially, kids want to be accepted. They want to keep
Yes.
their friends. I get it. We don't say don't be friends with them, obviously. We're just like, let's just take care of yourself. You're not going to lose that friend. And what we teach them, too, is when you suspect that your friend is having any of these things, you need to tell a trusted adult.
Right.
Telling that trusted adult is not betraying your friend's trust. They may get a little angry at you at first, but they're going to thank you at the end. They really are. They just need to get the help that they need. And children this age just can't do that. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what do you do in a situation where your child comes to you, you're their trusted adult,
Yeah.
and they're telling you about a friend of theirs?
Yes.
And what's the best, I've been through multiple here, so,
Yes.
but what does the parent, the trusted parent do?
Do.
Is it, I know I have contacted the parent of the child.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's with good results. Sometimes it's they're blinded to it, just as
Right,
you were saying.
right.
They're in absolute denial and they belittle the feelings. Oh, they don't know what real problems are. Those
Right.
kind of situations.
Right.
So if you reach out and you get those kind of situations, is the best avenue to go to a school counselor.
Yes, absolutely.
And then have the
I
school
would-
counselor.
I
bring
would
them
say
around.
absolutely do that, because like I said, somebody may miss this, we have a very specific protocol when a child is talking about suicidality or even self-harm, telling that counselor or the psychologist in combination with any mental health professionals in the building, they can take care of that one individual and then they will reach out to the parents. So it may take some of that onus off of you.
Right, and also the child.
And the child.
That's worried about their friend. Yes.
Correct. As long as someone in the school knows, we can take care of it. Yeah.
Do you find that kids are starting to maybe not talk about it as much, or share that feeling as much because they're worried about all of the adults swooping in?
I find that they're talking about it a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
The ones that are, I mean, I know that
Yes.
there's a lot that are looking for
Yeah, it's-
attention and help
yes.
to get through whatever they're dealing with, but then there's some that maybe might be shutting down because they don't want.
Absolutely.
The
There
alarms
are,
to
we
go
do
off.
have those, and it's the quiet ones that worry me. I mean, the ones that talk about it too really worry me, but it's the quiet ones that worry me. And when we get any inkling that something's not right, we pull them in and talk to them. And 9 out of 10 times they will talk to us. It may take multiple times. It may not be that person, it may have to be somebody else. But if there is concern from anywhere, they need to come let us know. Yes, Miss Banks?
Yeah, my granddaughter had mentioned it, and I had a call from the school, and I feel bad. I mean, we talked about it at that time and talked about it the next week, and I showed her, I love you, I need you here with me, and she's very compassionate because she feels she actually has to be my nurse because I've had some medical
I know.
issues. But to make a long story short is that I haven't brought it up recently. I mean, this just doesn't go away. You know, if she's had that thought, I mean, what do we do to continue addressing the issue?
Right.
Do
Well,
we
sometimes
just
the thoughts are
continue or
fleeting.
leave it alone?
Well, sometimes the thoughts are fleeting, especially at this age with the up and downs. They could be fleeting. Someone could have this thought once and then it never happens again. It's just the more these thoughts arise, the greater the chances are that it's going to occur. I feel like having that open discussion with your child is never a bad thing. How are you feeling today? Have you had these thoughts since then? Talking about it's not going to make them think about it more. Does that make sense? We go into school saying, these are the signs, these are the symptoms, you need to tell an adult. We wouldn't be doing that if we thought that would put thoughts in children's heads.
Right.
Does that make sense? So I think always having that gauge of where your child is a good thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else have any questions? Are you interested in seeing what our suicide protocol looks like? I can show you that. It's on the website. Okay. Let me see if I can. I'm not to technology, but do you want to keep running when I show this? Doesn't matter. Sure. Yeah, because you can find it. We just have a protocol, just so you know. Let's hope my email does not come up. Shoot. Is there a way to blank that for a second? How do I do that? Blank this screen.
It is a beautiful picture, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? I think it's Hawaii.
Hey, Kim.
Kim,
Kim.
how do I blacken the screen just so I can find it on my computer?
Looking for somebody who doesn't want to have on the screen.
I don't know which one no show is. And there are so many good websites out there that are legit, really good, that will show how to talk to your kids, what to look for. More and more every day, but if you go to like Virginia Department of Education, NIH, they all have really good information. So as a protocol in this county, every mental health professional, that includes school counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, have all been trained in this protocol.
Let me know whenever you're ready.
I will, I'm trying to find it. Sorry, give me one sec. and we're transparent about it. That's why it's on the website. I mean, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is, you know, everything that research is showing that we need to be doing. Almost there.
Okay, here we go.
1 second. Okay, try that now. Okay, so we have the specific guidelines that we go through, and you can find all of this information on the internet. And it just goes through who needs to be contacted, when do they need to be contacted, but more importantly, it's about reaching out to parents and to those that need to know that this is occurring in the school. And what this is based on, it's called the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. And this is something that nurses can be trained in, police officers, and like I said, every mental health professional in Loudoun County is trained on this. And it takes you through a step of questions that ask those specific things that we're looking for to see how a child is thinking and if this is something that we need to be concerned about. And part of it also talks about the deterrence, like I spoke about earlier. And then it also talks about like the reasons and how long, and all of this goes into thinking how significant is that for a child. So it's pretty scripted in terms of they say yes to this, this is what you do. They say no to this, then you go on to this. So it should be very standardized for all children. So hoping that none of you ever get this form home, but it does go home to you. And it does, then we encourage you to take it to a mental health professional, but then copies are also stored in the school system, just so we have records of it. And then, you know, we just contact and we have follow-up meetings, and it's just all very specific. Yeah. Yes?
What if you can't afford the services?
I know.
This is my youngest of 5 children.
I know.
And 2, a junior, senior in high school, first semester senior at George
Yeah, I'm
Mason,
gonna get that.
daughter graduate
On
from
this.
college.
Yes.
It's a real problem for me. I have 3 children who have spoken dark thoughts.
Mhm.
It overwhelms me. Then the schools say, well, reach out to things. Well, we don't fall in the category of where you qualify on the sliding
Right.
scale. They don't care that you have children in college, all these expenses. So I don't qualify for help, to get help for my children.
Right.
Outside of the school. What does a parent do when it's dark children who are talking about this and you can't afford to financially get help? What do you do?
I wish I had that answer for you, to be honest. I wish I did. I know how frustrating it is to find those services. We have sat with parents. We have a wonderful social worker here who is really good at finding some of those.
It's not my child here that's the problem.
Right.
My children in high school, when they hit high school, and I'm not saying it's not a problem in middle school, but with travel sports and then people who are in honors classes and AP classes and they're expected to volunteer 120 hours
Oh,
per
your
semester.
increased anxiety, absolutely.
Yeah, my
Stress level.
The stress in my home,
Yeah.
knowing that my children are all stressed out,
Oh, yeah.
and I can't financially afford to get them help.
And it's getting worse
outside of
every
the
year.
school. I could end up with a couple of kids committing suicide. So I'm very upset with that there's not more programs for parents who don't fall in that sliding scale. We live in an expensive area.
Have you talked to the social worker at that school?
They say talk to the county thinking that there's a sliding scale. I already know I don't fall in the
But there are
sliding
other programs than just Loudoun County Mental Health.
Yeah, like we have our
Yeah.
social worker for this year alone, I'd say at least 5 of my 8th grade families who don't qualify actually got in-home services.
In-home services.
So at the high school they
Yes.
Yeah, these
But I know
services,
that's
these services
partly
are
to the school
statewide, they're not just,
heritage,
Yeah.
you know, the counseling thing, but when they sit there and say, oh, there's a sliding scale thing, I already know I don't fit in that.
Right. No, we do our very best. Like, our social worker really will research and find.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I should talk to the high school more.
Social worker. You talk to our social worker.
Is it a matter of finding somebody that accepts insurance? Cause I know I
Well,
ran
my-
into that in the beginning.
My insurance has a $6,000 per person deductible, $14,000 per
Okay.
family.
Yeah. It's, I mean,
And you have to come up with $6,000
Gotcha.
per person, and
Before,
then a
right.
max of 13,500
Yeah.
for that. And I have children in college that they don't care that this
Right.
is going on.
right.
You run out of money.
No, I understand.
I understand.
Can I just give
Yes,
you a
please.
feedback? You could, if you don't seek for help, you won't get it. So keep advocating for them and yourself. And sometimes we think that it's only medical, medicines or whatever, or therapists, but it's not. It's also the environment in the house because, and I know it's hard, I'm a single parent of two, so it's the fact of you gotta take care of yourself so you can put the environment there for your kids, and they will sense anything in the house.
It's those protective factors we were talking about.
Yes, so anything starts from the house. So start from there. Once you think you have the energy physically and mentally, then move on to the next. But don't give up on seeking help just because you don't qualify on this or on that note. There's gotta be something. So keep pushing it.
One thing I wanna suggest that I did for me, because I have a son that's 22, and in his bedroom, he has black curtains, and he doesn't want me to open the shade, and he'd rather stay in that room with the black curtains, and, you know, and get up and go to work and go outside, as if he's a vampire, you know, I don't want the light. But, I read a lot, and I read on what to do, you know, I would go in, I'd sit and talk to him, and as I would talk to him, I'd slowly progress to opening the shades, and I would have breakfast, take him breakfast or something, and we would sit down and have breakfast or have some juice or something, and to try to get him out of his shell, cause it's just like he's closed in, and I need to crack the shell to get him to come open and come out, so, but I did a lot of reading, mental health reading, and,
Yes.
the, internet has a lot of good stuff that you could start with before you're able to get those other avenues to
And
help
before
you.
sometimes they come to that level,
Right.
you start
Those
preparing yourself,
perfect-
and it's not gonna be perfect, of course, things are gonna come up.
But you're not
at
alone.
least you know.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
it's spreading, and as I mentioned, this is my youngest of 5, so, you know, the pressure of doing travel sports, and then the other one honors, the other one, it's just, they each have their set of problems, and they're each as important to me. And the thought of losing,
Yeah, I
and
completely
they talk
understand.
about dark thoughts.
And
Yeah.
let them know how
Just last
important they
night,
are.
Yeah.
you know, so.
You missed part, like, before we were talking about having those open communications, those open conversations, and really trying to focus on all of those positive protective factors that our children have. The things that we need to teach them, that we assume because we had those, that they are gonna automatically have them. It's a completely different environment. I know it's completely different from when I went to school.
Well, they have the
I see
internet,
this.
they
Oh my
compare
gosh.
themselves to other people.
Exactly.
Where we do also, but
There's
they're
positive
more-
that can come from it, and then there's extreme negatives.
But they know if there's gatherings other places and they haven't been invited.
Right.
Because the people who do the gatherings brag,
Mhm.
you know, and so the children feel left out, like, look at how much fun these people are having and I wasn't invited. You know, or the person I liked, wow, there they are with somebody else on the internet. You know,
Right.
so it's like the internet is such, in my opinion, a negative compared to when I was in high school. You know, I don't see the positive anymore with it when I see it.
What was that?
Sorry. As I've heard, I mean, there are so many accomplishments that I've heard from your family, you know, George Mason, I mean,
Oh,
wow,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, they
So
work
let
really
them
hard.
know those are accomplishments, because my son is traveling here and there, and then my daughter is asking me, oh, but I want time with my friends. So I tell her, friends, school, so everything has a time. So explain to them, you know, you ask them, do you have goals? Do you have, you know, things that you want to achieve? And your family has achieved a lot of goals. So keep talking about it. And that's very important. And my belief is that in the environment that you are in, that's your environment. That's where you belong to. I mean, I spent 3 hours in the soccer game last night. That's my environment. That's my daughters, and we have no other choice because that's what I'm putting out there for them. So that's it. Let them know that it's not stress. I went to boarding school, I went to private, I went to public, and we all have stress. We just have to manage. We have to find that therapeutic thing for us. And we need to, and reading, it's amazing. I mean, if you don't, I remember I started medical interpreting 3 years ago, and before that, I didn't want to read. But I got the time, and God knows why He puts certain things on our path. And I enjoy psychology. I read a lot. That helps a lot. If you're having Teenager for the Souls, I mean, there's so many books out there.
There's a lot of good mindfulness stuff out there.
It's very, very helpful. I believe on the diet. I believe there's so much that you can learn when you read. So much. Even if you are dealing with your own anxiety about it, you can pass over the anxiety to your kids. Definitely.
Oh, definitely.
And you don't want to do that. But of course,
see it
we're
a lot.
not perfect. We're not perfect. So we just have to try. And I do my own therapeutic things. So, you pass on. You want to pass on the positive as much as you can. And try not to pass too much the negative. So, but those are accomplishments.
Yeah.
Can you go over some of the like self-soothing type things that you go over with the students, like recommendations and stuff for them?
Yeah, there's well, we do groups here too, but there's a lot of mindfulness now that we're talking about within the schools, and a lot of that's the deep breathing, the visualizations, those calming techniques, and exercise. I mean, walking. When I have a kid in crisis, I'm like, let's go for a walk. Let's walk the building. We have great conversations when we walk. I have great conversations in the car with my kids when they're not focused on their screen. So I think just having that communication is a self-soothing thing. Self-soothing doesn't have to be just themselves, but it's seeking out others to help with that. I mean, I feel like that exercise component is really big. I feel like our kids are not getting enough play. Even in middle school, they're not getting enough play. They're not getting enough sunlight. I feel like sunlight impacts it.
Or if they're getting the playtime, it's under stress with the teams and
Correct.
practices. And,
Yes. Yes. That's
worried
sports.
about
That's
whether
not
they're gonna
play.
get cut. Yeah. So
Yes.
you gotta have some of that.
Yeah, I think you have to have that downtime.
In our
I'm a
hou-
big proponent of
yeah.
downtime.
In our house,
I am.
all three of my kids pet, and we've had a lot of. Our family's been through a lot, but I adopted when I started talking and having conversations with them and recognizing how they thought that everything was so big in that moment.
Right.
Is
The
our-
all or nothing thinking.
So our mantra, which I say to them constantly, they get tired of hearing it, is "This too shall pass."
Yep.
It feels like the end of the world now, but there will be a tomorrow. And then I take those things that we've gone through and said, "See, you thought the world was ending, but look where we are now." And
Exactly.
just take them through each and just
then-
one day at a time, and this too shall pass.
Right. And then, with our anxious kids, because we all know that's on the rise big time, the anxiety of, well, if I don't do this, then this isn't going to happen. Or this is the worst thing that's going to happen. So we do a lot of what we call detective thinking. So what do you think is the worst thing that's going to happen if you fail your test? What's the worst thing that can happen? And they'll say it. And you're like, has that ever happened before? Well, no. So we kind of retrace and go, well, this is really what could happen. But let's also talk about how to prevent failing from the test. So giving those skills too. Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff about there.
I'm glad to hear you say that because my granddaughter, we strive for honor roll, and she's done so well.
She's done great.
And but I think I'm probably putting a little more pressure on her because she brought home a C, and she said, "Well, Mom, I just got a C this time, And I said, "Well, okay, that's all right." And I'm real excited for her, but I know she can do the work, and I feel bad because I kind of push her to be more focused and forget the friends and the conversations and stuff and focus on your work. So I feel I could be putting a little extra pressure.
Probably.
Yeah.
I also like to say friends are important. Friends are really important at this age. Friends are important at my age, but they're really important at this age. That is their number one social, is their friends. Yes, school's important too, but if you have happy friendships, you're probably going to be doing fairly well in school. So it kind of all goes together where we can't just look at this one thing. We're losing sight of that whole picture of this is what adolescence looks like. It looks like friendships and play and school and family and arguments and discipline. These are all things that need to occur in our kids' lives. You know, they need to take ownership of their behaviors. We're kind of lacking that sometimes too. So we're really trying to focus on that. Yeah.
I think the resources here in Loudoun County, I come from Fairfax
Okay.
3 years ago, and here are very, like she was saying, limited, expensive.
Yeah.
But I've been searching from parenting, because I'm a big fan of learning and, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, parenting, it's not only, I had to take parenting classes when I was getting divorced back 8 years ago, but I was glad I went, and I kept going, and I think it's a never-ending story.
I would agree. And you know what? There are
It's-
more and
it's
more.
very helpful.
There are more and more free parenting classes and services like that. We're providing more and more through the school system every year. We have parent workshops all the time. I know that I've gone through and I've presented some about restorative practices and how to put that in your home. And there's a lot of things out there for free, actually, if you just kind of keep looking. Yeah. Yep.
I guess one
Yes,
other
ma'am.
question, since you mentioned in the very beginning that, you know, there, like the studies and everything were
Yeah.
focusing on the high school level, but
Yeah.
you're seeing it move down
Mhm.
so much in middle school and even elementary school. Recently, I know the high schools have adapted, not all of them, but like with the Ryan Bartell Foundation,
Uh-huh.
the We Are Human.
Yep. The sources of strength.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's just had such a phenomenal effect at the high school level.
Yep.
Is there any thoughts or plans of bringing
Mhm.
something like that into the middle school level, since this is when they're
Yes.
starting and they need all that
Yes.
positive reinforcement and
Yeah.
all that stuff that they get
If
through that?
you were following the school board budget, it was passed, and part of that was the mental health initiative at the middle school level. So if it comes to fruition, what that would mean is not only would we have our wonderful counselors here, we'd get another one, and then I would be here full time, and so would the social worker. And that just leads to so much more prevention.
Right, but instead of like, I
And
guess,
we're looking at sources of strength and all
well,
of
and
those.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at where I've seen the difference is because, yeah, they see it from the adults, but
Yeah.
to start seeing it coming from their peer level,
Mhm.
that was
That's the-
phenomenal.
that's the
to
big
see
peer
all
push.
of the peers coming
Yeah.
out,
Mhm.
obviously led by the adults, but maybe getting
Which right, it is the peer.
the peers getting more involved
Yeah.
with it.
I know, I've been, like I said, I've been in this county 20 years. I know that all the stuff from the high school is really coming down to the middle school, which is wonderful.
Mhm.
So yeah, it is happening.
Okay, because that just, I mean, what I saw with that is it makes the students
Mhm.
more aware of the things they're doing that could be causing negative effects on other people
Correct.
also. You know, like your words matter. That
Yeah.
was the big theme this year, and it's huge.
Yeah.
And so I think if they brought that down to kind of open up
Mhm.
everybody's perspective at the middle school level.
Yeah,
then
we're
that
also
would
doing a lot more of the restorative practices in the schools, which is not just for conflict, but community building.
Mm-hmm.
So our focus really is on how can we build that community within a classroom? How can we build the community within the school? Because, like I said in the beginning, we're lacking that community. And when people feel like they're part of a community, they're less likely to harm themselves and harm others. It's just the bottom line, and we're just trying to get that community back. Yeah. So yes, it's in the works. Yeah. Any other questions? No?
I'm sorry.
It's okay, Miss Banks.
But my granddaughter went from talking about hurting herself, which was back a while ago, to I don't want to go to school because I don't want to get killed.
I'm like killed.
You know the shooters
Oh
coming
yeah,
in
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So that
Yeah,
had
we
been-
addressed that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that had been a big deal.
That was, we did. We had, I mean, because obviously the fear for the parents coming down to the kids is huge.
Yes.
Very huge. We did address it a lot within our community, that we're safe. We talk about being safe. We do things to make sure that we're safe. So we have a police officer.
She's okay with it now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
She's good. Yeah. Okay, we good?
Thank
Anything
you very
else?
much.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Anytime. How do we stop?
This was well needed. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.